On today's episode of Watch Chair Go, we are back with my $500 Porsche 944, and we're gonna try to fix the oil cooler that has failed as dumping oil into my coolant. What is going on, guys? I'm Watch Chair Go, and today we're here in the garage with my $500 1987 Porsche 944 powered by the naturally aspirated four-cylinder, this gigantic four-cylinder from back in the day. And I gotta say, these back in the day engines, I don't get along with them very well. There's just like no attention paid when they design these things to repair. And it's been a nightmare, but I've been out here for the last few hours and I figured we'd just start with the oil cooler off. So if you can see right there, there's a huge gap between the oil cooler housing and the block there. You can see the oil cooler just has fallen out. It looks like the O-rings have completely degraded inside there. Let's get this thing up and out of the engine compartment and see what we gotta do. We gotta pressure test this thing, and I hope it's not a bad element because I wanna put this thing back together tonight. So we got the oil cooler housing out of here, as you can see. It definitely is full of coolant and oil, but I mean, that's pretty typical. As it comes apart, it's gonna leak some of those things. The oil cooler element itself is sitting right there, and now it is time to test that thing. So over here, I went ahead and I set the air compressor to 10 PSI on the regulator. Let's spool out a little bit of hose, and we're gonna take this over to my bucket of water, which is just an oil pan that we filled to the top with water. Here we go. And we'll set it in here. I'm going to plug one hole of it and put that blowgun in the other hole, and I'll just cover one with my thumb. That'll cover the other hole. We'll put 10 PSI on that thing, and if it leaks, it's trash. If it is trash, I think we have to scrap the car. That one part is $584. More than I paid for the car, and closing in on a good amount of what I've got in the car. So I'm hoping it's good. So we'll just go ahead and dunk it in here and get to work. I think we might need to wash this first because there is gunk coming out of it, and that gunk looks like bubbles. So I'm gonna rinse this thing out real fast and see if it gets any better. Try number 2. Set this thing down in there. I don't think it leaks. Oh no, I can't get it off. All right, let's flip it over, try one more time. Come on. Well, that looks like a good test to me. Now everything I owned is covered in oil and coolant. These old O-rings, look at that, there's a nick in that O-ring. Oh yeah, the O-rings are in terrible condition. Now that our oil cooler element has tested good, we have here our oil cooler upgrade kit, I guess is what we're gonna call this. This has metal shims in it. You see those little guys hanging out in there? That actually makes sure this thing doesn't fail by spacing it out just a little bit more than the stock setup. So first things first, we're gonna take all of the junk that we've pulled off this thing, which is a ton, and we're gonna take it over to the smart washer at the big shop and clean all of those parts up. We'll take these heat shields that are covered in oil and the oil cooler, and I don't know about the element. I think the element's good to go after I wash that out and clean everything up. The biggest nightmare of work on this car is that everything underneath it is covered in oil. This should help a lot. It actually looked like it might have been leaking just around the bottom of these gaskets as well. So glad we got brand new ones. The old ones are super swollen. Okay, we're over here in the big shop, and it is time to do some cleaning. So we're gonna kick it with the oil filter housing because that is the nastiest part. Come on, where's the warm fluid at? Oh no, it's low on fluid. That means the heater's not on and all the microbes died. Looks like it's time to start from scratch on this bad boy. Somebody took too much fluid out of it. Now we are back from the parts washer with a box of brand new looking parts. This stuff, it wouldn't come off. It's very baked on there, but I got everything else off that I could, and we are ready to reassemble the oil cooler and hopefully get everything out of this. So we're gonna go ahead and blow the filter element out with some air, and I absolutely did not get everything out of this. That's about what I figured. I thought more and more of the cleaning solution and old oil might come out of this. I just crawled under there and pulled out 2 shims and the block O-ring. That's the block O-ring right there. This is what the new one looks like. So that is a big difference. We're gonna see if the new setup even needs shimmed. I guess you just put a straight edge across the oil cooler element once it's in the housing, and that will indicate whether we need to shim it or not. Well, I laid my straight edge across there, and that definitely needs shimmed. It is nowhere close to being lined up with the housing of the oil cooler. And with 2 shims on there, you can see it's absolutely flawless. So I guess it's staying with 2 shims. If you're doing this job, you need to make sure you have this tool on hand. I just bought it on Amazon. It's a specialty Porsche tool, P52-100B. And this simulates the oil pressure relief valve, and that screws in to the oil cooler housing right there. So before I put that in, I gotta get this housing and everything back up into about where it belongs, roughly where it belongs. And then I'll install that. Then I'll tighten the bolts down on the oil cooler to 20 Newton meters. I think they're M8 bolts, 20 Newton meters should be the spec there. And I think this helps align the gasket and the housing itself, but it might make it tricky to get it all worked back up through the exhaust, basically, where I pulled this through. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing down in there. First, I'll put in the block gasket, put some grease on there to hold it in, and then go to town. You'll need a 13 and a few different extensions to get this thing torqued back down. But as you can see, there's the oil filter housing sticking up there at the oil cooler, and that's all tightened down. And I use this 3-inch extension to do the top, and then this gigantic setup that I put together to do the bottom. So now it's time to get back down below and pull out the oil pressure relief valve positioning tool, I think is what we would call that, and then clean the, I should have taken that with me and cleaned it, but I gotta clean the relief valve there, but we're ready to install it. I'll just clean it with brake clean and a rag, but it would have been nice to use the parts washer. Well, here we are underneath the car. As you can see, everything is considerably cleaner as time goes on. It gets cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And we can now unscrew the positioning tool. At least we should be able to. It was moving very nicely there. Okay, it's going in nicely. Now it's time to try and get it out. And it is finding me. Getting a good grip on that thing is hard. It is knurled, so that helps quite a bit. I might have to loosen the bolts and back it out a little bit, and then tighten the bolts so that it repositions itself. And the oil pressure relief valve alignment tool is out, and as you can see, I've got the oil pressure relief valve itself started. The housing is torqued to 20 Newton meters, and now I have to get my, I think, 21 millimeter socket back up in there and tighten that thing down. And I'll tell you how tight it has to be. But it's finally, you can see the light of day here at the end of this job. Here's the O-rings that came out of the cooler. You can see when I roll it, they're completely cracked. So, you know, no modern car would do anything like that. They'd never see a failure like this on anything new. Literally like 10 cents can pretty much wipe out the engine on this thing. And just like that, most of this engine is back together. I've spent the last few hours getting the timing right. I think this thing had always been retarded 1 degree on the timing. It looks like it had been off by a notch, and I ended up advancing the cam after I lined up the marks in the back. That it was 1 tooth, right? So now it's either gonna be advanced 1 degree because it was right before, or it will be correct. But I'm pretty sure it was off a degree before. As you can see, all of our idlers are new, and nice new bearings, the tensioner, balance shaft belt, and before I took it apart, I checked the plate by going like this, and I was able to put it right in the middle of that bolt right there. On the balance shaft belt with the deflection. Now, it should be tighter with a new belt, and it is tighter. It's a lot harder to even get close to the middle of that bolt there. So that's my tension gauge. I'm not gonna use that $1,000 tension gauge. It's just a whole lot of work for no reason. So I think I've got everything set correctly. Everything's been cycled multiple times. You have to turn the engine over 2 complete revolutions, and I just look at the cam mark and keep spinning it until it's done, and then check the tensions again. So I think it's all tensioned and it's all ready to go back together, but Putting this back together is gonna take another 6-8 hours, I think, because there's just so much to do, and there's a lot of cleaning to do. I'm gonna clean up the top of the head, put that new head gasket stuff on, not the gasket itself, but all the intake gaskets, exhaust gaskets, lots of replacement to do. So with that said, what we got done today was the oil cooler, and that's completely finished and all tightened up, and all of the timing belt and balance belts. Also, I think the balance belts weren't aligned. Somebody had done all of this in the past, and I think they had done a really bad job. None of the marks lined up on the balance shafts. There's a mark right there. You guys can see that, and a mark right there. This one was like all the way over here, and the other one was way off too. So now it's all lined up, and I think it should run better than ever. I think it'll actually run correctly. I think it was just put together bad the last time. So this time, it's gonna go back together painstakingly, and we'll drive it tomorrow. I'm excited to be done with this thing. I'm ready to get back on that 350Z. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to head on over to shop.watchjrgo.com where you can get cool shirts, not like this. And please like, share, subscribe, do whatever you want to do. And I'll talk to you next time. Tell me that oil cooler and all these belts aren't pretty. It looks so much better. She's gonna run like a champ. So over here, I went ahead and I set the air compressor to 10 degrees on the